Hey everyone, Josh from Countdown to Classic here with a bit of a random video for you. I just got some information from a fan about 6, 7 hours ago that I haven't had an opportunity until now to really record this video about it. And it's just something, a little bit off the wall, but pertinent nonetheless in regards to where the Warcraft franchise might be going in the future. And, obviously Blizzard seeking input from us, the fans, on where they take it in the future. So, as the title of the video suggests, there was a recent survey sent out about the Warcraft franchise in totality, sort of on the whole, not about WoW, not about RTSs, not about the Warcraft mobile title or anything like that. Just Warcraft in general, moving forward. And it was about the next Warcraft video game that Blizzard might make for us. No mention as to any specifics, obviously, as about the platform, the genre, the release date, or none of that nonsense. Just a really general, broad scope survey that, they've been known to send these surveys out in the past. Over the last few years, we've seen numerous amounts of these kinds of things come up in relation to World of Warcraft, particularly with Classic, we've seen it as well. A lot of times now, you might be asking, a lot of people say, oh, Josh, how do we know it's legit? Is it bullshit? Blah, 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 blah. Every time we talk about these things, when they first start to trickle out, there's always a couple of comments about like, oh, it looks photoshopped. It's not legit. It's bullshit. And it always turns out to be true. Like it's, and then thousands more people get the survey and it's like, oh yeah, it's a thing. So like basically a listener of my show put this out there in my Discord. I DM'd them and said, hey man, do you mind sending me through a few more screenshots if you got them? And they screenshotted every question of the survey. So, I figured, why not? Let's talk about it. A huge thank you to Shepta, by the way, a listener of the show. I can't thank you enough, basically, for sending this on and giving us something to talk about. Generally, Blizzard does obviously say things like, please don't discuss this survey, blah, blah, blah. But who are we kidding? There's going to be a million videos on this, I'm sure, in the next 12 to 24 hours. People will be discussing it. So, like, they know what they're doing. They know it's going to get out there. It's really not that big of a deal. And I don't particularly care about sharing it. It's just not a big deal, quite frankly. I wanted to go through these questions and basically show you guys what's being asked and give you some time to think about how you feel about the questions and how you feel about where this might be pushing Warcraft in the future. And I'm being very careful not to say World of Warcraft because there's no indication whatsoever that this is, the long talked about or memed about WoW2. We'll get to that after I get through all the questions. But look, let's zip through the questions and just, I don't want to spend much time on this, guys. You can go back and rewind the video if you want to spend more time thinking about it. Let's just basically go through what they are. So this is question number one. How important or unimportant are each of the following features when considering a new Warcraft game? It includes iconic WoW class abilities. For example, Pyroblast, Mortal Strike. And then obviously you get all the options there. Interesting start. Okay. You'll see a very common theme as we go through these questions, and some of them are kind of head scratchers, to be honest with you. How important or unimportant are each of these? Including iconic WoW zones, for example, Blackrock Mountain and the Barrens. Then we go on to including multiplayer combat that requires tanking, healing, and DPS, the Holy Trinity. Going so far as just to ask about multiplayer combat, I think is very interesting. We'll come back to this stuff soon. I'm just going to zip through it. Allows you to play as a member of the Horde or the Alliance. Okay. Allows you to choose from multiple races. Includes iconic WoW dungeons, for example, Scarlet Monastery or Scholomance. Includes well-known characters from the franchise, for example, Jaina, Illidan. Includes iconic Warcraft cities, for example, Stormwind or Orgrimmar. Includes iconic Warcraft classes, for example, Mage, Paladin, Shaman. Allows you to play as multiple classes/roles. Includes iconic WoW specs, for example, Fury Warrior, Fire Mage. And that's it. Those are the 11 questions that were posed in this survey, which, obviously we've gone very quickly through them. I'll come back around, but already you might be thinking the same thing initially that I was thinking, like, those are some really odd questions. Incredibly broad incredibly bizarre in my mind. The first thing that struck me as I read through these was these are the kind of questions that you ask. I would have thought. Now, I'm no game dev, guys, but at the very, very preliminary stages of making a game or planning out a game, these are like the very foundation, the structural foundation of a game. How are we going to do it? Will there be Horde and Alliance? Will there be multiplayer involved? Are there going to be tank heals and DPS? Will we have dungeons? Are we going to give the players new content, or are we going to rely on the lore that we've obviously spent years and years building up? Really bizarre questions. And again, some of you might be saying, well, Josh, this makes me think it's kind of bullshit. Like, where are the other surveys popping up? And look, as I say, I always lean on the fact that every time we do this, it comes back to it being legit. So I'm going with this being legit. I've got no reason to think otherwise, no reason to think this particular fan would lead me astray. My fans are good to me. They lead me onto hot tips, and here we are at the outset with this. But it is bizarre, these questions. So like I say, to survey the players on really, really basic foundational questions about what a future Warcraft game will look like kind of boggles my mind a little bit. Now, granted, Blizzard has been, recently on this kind of like, we're listening to the players binge and no more of us just, looking down our nose at you and telling you that we know what you want. We've got our ears open. We're the players' company again, supposedly. Whether or not this is trying to lean into that from a PR and marketing perspective and make the players feel like they're having some form of real input into the shape of the Warcraft franchise in the future, we shall see. But perplexing is really a good word for me. Let's go back through some of these questions again and just, have a really quick think about what they're really getting at and the implications behind some of them. Again, like including iconic WoW class abilities. Well, this kind of question automatically has me thinking, well, what kind of a genre are we talking about here? I would need to know before I can almost answer a question like that. Because when you say iconic WoW class abilities, I'm obviously thinking RTS or MMO for the most part. Granted, you could do that in other genres of game, don't get me wrong, but that's where my mind first goes towards. And we start to think of things like I semi tongue-in-cheek joke about, and we'll get to it eventually, World of Warcraft 2 or Warcraft 4, or is it another Warcraft mobile game that a number of you might be screaming at the screen saying, Josh, it's obviously a mobile game, they're leaning towards mobile now. Or is it something else entirely? We'll discuss all of that, in a couple of minutes here. But really interesting to see, that one on the class abilities, and that might be some kind of hint already as to what's cooking in the kitchen. Including iconic WoW zones. Now, again, that's a little bit of a hint of, the kind of geography we're talking about. I guess this still could apply to any genre, to be honest with you, even if it was a mobile game. Just including locations that we've all come to know and love would obviously be something that they're interested in. Do people want familiarity with the content that they're absorbing, or do you want something completely fresh and new? Expand the Warcraft lore and story completely beyond everything and anything we've ever come to know and love. That would be a bold step, but we'll get to how you feel about this one. This was a really interesting one to me. Includes multiplayer combat that requires tanking, healing, and DPS. Again, to be asking the players at this stage, hey, do you want multiplayer in this game? Fuck, I would have thought you would have figured that one out when you came up with the concept of it. Like, is this so pre-development, this crowdsourcing of like, what do the players want, that this will actually help forge what kind of a game we're getting? It's a unique concept for sure. I really doubt that Blizzard would allow the results of a survey or taking the pulse of the community to dictate that much to them, and such an important future step for them. The company is, they need a win. We all know this. Without going into all the details, Blizzard knows it needs a win. And it can't really take much of a misstep with the future of the Warcraft franchise, its baby. To be asking us such an important question, again, I'm like, what? Will it be multiplayer? Like, that's kind of like me saying, you tell us. This is a bizarrely important decision that you're throwing in a survey that requires tanking, healing, and DPS, the holy trinity, like we always talk about in MMOs. It is interesting that there's a lot of conversations these days surrounding the holy trinity and whether or not it's an old ethos that we need to let go of moving forward in MMOs, or whether it's so crucial to the core concept of how we play these games that we just simply can't divorce ourselves from it. That's a conversation for another day, perhaps. But I find it interesting, again, to raise the question of, are players ready to take that step away from that? I would imagine the vast amount of survey answerers here would be like, or responders, I should say, would say like they want all that stuff in. But I don't want to speak for other people. What do I know? This is probably the strangest question of all of them to me. Allows you to play as a member of the Horde or the Alliance. In a Warcraft game, you're making a Warcraft game and you're actually asking the question, do you want to have the Horde or the Alliance involved? That's kind of how I'm reading it. Unless it's like, you interpret it as something like, oh, Josh, what if they're introducing a third faction and you play as this third faction and you're not necessarily playing as the Horde or the Alliance, and now this new threat comes and you're going to war against both the Horde and the Alliance, and it's crazy. So you're not actually playing as the Horde or the Alliance, but they're still involved in the game. Yeah, I guess you could interpret it that way, but my initial interpretation is actually just whether or not the Horde or the Alliance are in the game at all, which again, we talk about a Warcraft game without them being involved. I just don't know how you could. How could you possibly write any kind of narrative or scenario that doesn't involve them? Look, granted, it's, all of this stuff is creative, and of course there's a way to do it, but whether or not that's a smart decision is another question. Allows you to choose from multiple races. That's I've got no dramas with that question. I get where they're coming from. Includes iconic WoW dungeons. Really interesting one, this one, because they're actually talking about like dungeons, whether or not, again, a split road here on interpretation of this one, where it's like, are you talking about dungeons in the MMO sense or dungeons just as a geographical location? So, you might even, again, to boil it down to your base level, like a mobile game. Oh, one of the levels is at Scarlet Monastery. And it's like, oh, I know that place. Yay, tickling that nostalgia bone, or, the lore bone that I've got for this franchise. Or is it something a bit more in depth? Like, is this a hint again that it is a MMO? Who knows? When they talk about dungeons, are they talking about dungeons as content that we're actually going through? Because that question is probably the spiciest one, depending on your interpretation of it. If they're asking if we want to go back to old WoW dungeons that we know in a new game, again, be it maybe, action game or MMO or RTS, it's an interesting concept. But you'll see the common theme that I alluded to at the start of this video was this whole survey is basically just pushing the responder on how attached they are to the past with Warcraft, which again, I'm sorry I keep saying this, guys, but it's so strange when we talk about huge IPs. That's what pushes them forward, is people's attachment to the lore and history of the IP. It is strange to talk about the future of the IP and basically question players. So how married are you to all that stuff we've done in the years gone by? Should we do something new, or do you like the old stuff? It's head-scratching, to say the least. This is exactly along the same theme, including well-known characters from the franchise. All they're asking at a base level is, do you want to see shit you already know? Or do you want us to completely cook up something new? How much faith do you have in us to tell you a brand new story? Or do you want, again, obviously, what might be a brand new story, still rooted somewhat in the past that you have a connection to? Interesting question to posit to players. This is exactly along the same lines. The iconic Warcraft cities, I won't get into it too much, includes iconic Warcraft classes. Again, it could be a number of different genres that we're talking about here. And quite frankly, if we're getting these kinds of questions in a survey, like I said, I don't think anything has been, any kind of decision has been made or any kind of foundation has been set. This is just throwing, shit against the wall and seeing what sticks with the players that respond to the survey. So they might definitely take some of this stuff on board. It's just so strange. I don't know what to say. So this could be an RTS with this question. This could be an MMO. I mean, what other genres of game really have us like, choosing classes? Dungeon crawlers, like a Diablo style game, obviously. There's a number of different, options before them with this kind of question. Allows you to play as multiple classes and roles. This one I thought was actually quite interesting because Final Fantasy XIV has found such great success as an MMO recently with the decisions that the open slather of options that it gives the player in terms of what class you play. You roll one character and you can be every class. You just change gear and bam, you're a new class. No need to create a new character or any of that stuff. So it is, and I quite like that, quite frankly. And I think that modern MMO gaming certainly, I think, has really gravitated towards players showing that they want all the choice in the world. Whether you like it or not, I think the proof is in the pudding and the way in which modern MMOs are played. So many people are alcoholics now. So many people want to try all the classes and have everything under the sun and be able to chop and change, like underwear as they see fit. The days, it's funny because I'm a WoW Classic fan. The roots of World of Warcraft, where you pick a class and choices matter, and it was way too much bloody work to start up another class, and generally people stuck with what they started with. Yeah, sure, people had alts back in the day and everything as well, but not to the degree that they do now. The decision mattering and choices mattering, we've kind of pushed against that a little bit as players, I think, with more modern MMOs, and people have really said, I want to do all the professions. I want to be all the classes. Give me choice, customization to a certain extent. So I think it's interesting to see Blizzard exploring that. I would think, I would be shocked if the answer came back to a question like this of people saying this was very unimportant to them. Granted, some of you might be out there, but when we talk about numbers, I think the majority would really sway in that direction of, I want to be able to do it all kind of thing. Includes iconic WoW specs. Now, again, is this a little bit of a tip of the hat to what genre we're getting? Well, when we talk about specs, we talk about dungeon crawlers or MMOs, right? RTSs don't really have specs, do they? Unless, you could always cook one up that does something like that. But what's going on here? Is this the first baby steps of World of Warcraft 2? I'll answer that question in a second. Or is this putting out the feelers for a Diablo-style Warcraft game? I don't know. That's the last question. So look, just to answer we'll wrap it up here, guys, but to finish off with the heavy stuff, World of Warcraft 2 is a term that gets thrown out on a relatively regular basis and has done, for many, many years now. My response to people that raise the concept of World of Warcraft 2 over the years has always sort of been, well, you're playing World of Warcraft 2 right now in an odd way, in that every expansion that comes out, to me, is World of Warcraft 2. It's literally an expansion. It's building and building and building and giving you more stuff. And the devs have more time to come up with more concepts to change the game for what they feel is the better. Now, I won't get into whether or not that's the case. You all obviously know a lot of the stories, but the devs are trying their best to, add to the game and build on it, hence the term expansion. I've always sort of said, like, well, that's World of Warcraft 2. A lot of you might balk at that and go, Josh, you're a fucking idiot. World of Warcraft 2 is a brand new title. Everyone starts from scratch. We get, a new engine in there, new graphics, new everything. It's completely overhauled. It's a new game. And yes, you are correct. I just don't see, I've personally, and the number of people that I've spoken to over the years who have shared this thought of mine, personally, I've never seen the need for Blizzard to go there. Am I intrigued by a World of Warcraft 2? Sure, I am. But I've not seen, like, what's in it for Blizzard at this point. They've kind of, they've definitely, it's fair to say, conquered the MMO mountain in years gone past with World of Warcraft. I'm not so sure. They've got a split path before them, whether they try to continue their stranglehold on the MMO genre, or if they're so bloody sick of it after all these years, they want to go in a new direction and never look at MMOs again. Who knows? But I just, I don't see how you sell people on World of Warcraft 2 when you just can build new expansions. Like, well, that's a big topic for another day. I don't want to get too caught up in the mud on that one, guys. But then we talk about options like Warcraft 4. So many of you are such huge RTS fans. I'm not a big RTS fan myself, but I completely respect the people that love them like a son. You know, people have been screaming for Warcraft 4. Maybe, in recent times, I'm not sure if those voices have been in loud, given a lot of external factors that should be taken into account. But the option is always there. We've got Diablo 4 coming soon, huge next step in that franchise. I don't think it's. I would expect Warcraft 4 at some point in the future. That's not a very bold or brave thing to say. I just can't see them not doing it. Whether it's in 2 years, in 5 years, I don't know. I would just bet money that it's coming at some point. That's just what I think. So whether or not this is Warcraft 4, again, I'm not sure. I kind of get a tingling that it's not. I would more lean towards, your third or fourth options, which is it Warcraft mobile related? Yes, we've got Arclight Rumble recently announced, coming into beta relatively soon. I think it might be in beta now, I'm not sure. But, they've obviously expressed some desire to move more towards that mobile market, as we've seen with Diablo Immortal, that launched 2 or 3 weeks ago now, that's clearly in the news for very obvious reasons. I don't need to pull punches on this video, guys. Obviously, the monetization has been pretty bloody ordinary. That's been way too kind. It's been horrible. And Blizzard has, decided to take the Diablo franchise down that mobile avenue. Whether or not, I think they have said something about wanting to take Warcraft down the mobile avenue with multiple titles. Don't quote me on that one. I might be very wrong. I swear I've seen something in the press about, like, a couple of Warcraft mobile titles or something, like, or maybe it was just Arclight Rumble. I'm not sure. You guys will have to correct me in the comments. But I wouldn't rule out that this is, poking around about that next Warcraft mobile title after Arclight Rumble. Sounds like something that could be done. I hope it's not. I really hope it's not. I don't. You'd want to think they learned from their mistake with Diablo Immortal in terms of people waiting for that next big Diablo title in 2018 at BlizzCon, hoping for news about Diablo 4, and they got Diablo Immortal first, was bizarre. And obviously you all remember how that worked out. I think it would be a very big misstep on Blizzard's behalf to explore the next Warcraft mobile title before doing something like a Warcraft 4 on PC, or a different genre of Warcraft game on PC, or something of that nature. I really hope they're not angling that way. Um, but then the final option is just something else entirely that we haven't really mentioned, like just, not an RTS, not a MMO. Maybe it is, like I said, is it a dungeon crawler, like a Diablo style game, but with a Warcraft skin? Who knows? Are they? It's not in Blizzard style to devise a new genre. They really don't do that. But like, you've got to throw it out there as a possibility as well. Anyway, guys, look, I'll kind of wrap it up there. That's all I really wanted to do because I Googled this, half an hour ago and no one's put up a video about it. No one's mentioned anything anywhere about it. And as I say, look, guys, I really don't think this is all bullshit. There's going to be a couple of you in the comments going, Josh, you fool, you gullible fool. Someone's photoshopped something and sent it to you and you've taken, the ball and ran with it. I really don't think that's the case. I think it's fine to discuss this stuff because I think it's going to turn out that more of you will get this survey and it'll be something that you'll see popping up more and more in the news over the next couple of days. It's not ground shaking news by any means of the imagination, but it's something to discuss. And look, hey, it's like I said, it's really interesting and really bizarre. Let me know in the comments, guys, how you feel about the answers to the questions, how you feel about the questions themselves, and whether you think this is, something that's going to happen, that the Warcraft will be taking the next, hopefully, positive step in the future. We'll get into all the other things another day. Thanks for letting me talk about this random stuff, guys. I hope you have a good day. Bye.